you so much for tuning in to The Narrative Native, where we will be reading Spindrift. Yes, for January 2025, we are reading Spindrift. We're gonna start Aquarius season off right with a good true story. It started out as a search for an apartment, changed to a ghost hunt, became a deeper spiritual search that led through the occult and esoteric philosophies, and concluded with Jane Bartell's death a few weeks after she had completed this manuscript, which recounts her experiences. So get your spliffs ready, libations, whatever it is you need to relax and listen to the tales of Miss Jane Bartell. True account of a spiritual search that began with unexplainable events in a New York townhouse. That's why we reading this one first. And then we're gonna get into this one. So if you're into spooky stories and all things spiritual, esoteric, then you've come to the right place. If you are a fan of other true crime or spooky stories, spiritual storytellers that are also on YouTube, comment down below. I'm going to tell you guys my top 3 favorites on YouTube in the next video. So yeah, we're going to light this. And then we're gonna start reading. Author's note. A fragment of this true paranormal experience appeared in Hans Holzer's book Ghosts I've Met, 1965, under the heading of The Townhouse Ghost. What is detailed herein is presented as it was lived through. There are no false effects, no shocks, and most of all, no manipulated and meaningless, most of all, nothing manipulated and meaningless to titillate the thrill seeker. This book is an honest endeavor to awaken in the reader as the experience did in the author. I'm gonna let that marinate a little bit. Everything that's written was experienced. I just want y'all to brace yourselves, because I'm bracing myself. I've been bracing myself since the book has been on its way. She says, I should have known when first I climbed that broad, creaking staircase, but I was bemused by the handsome mahogany posts. She was too enthralled with the structure. I should have known when the ragged carpeting clutched at my high heels, sending me reeling against the wall for support, only to be betrayed by the tattered paper as it forsook its uncertain moorings at my touch, meaning it fell apart soon as she went to go brace herself upon it. Most of all, I should have known when I took that last flight of stairs. It went straight up, steep as a ship's ladder, and was so narrow that I had to precede Mr. B, the rental agent, guided only by a single handrail and a dim bulb at the top. Looking back now, I wonder if the wild hammering of my heart came solely from having mounted four flights of stairs, or whether even then the house had begun to reach out for me. Certainly, on a conscious level, I had felt no fear. How could I when it appeared I was so close to what I had been searching for, month after worrisome month? An apartment in a townhouse off Lower Fifth Avenue on that celebrated and most lovely of Greenwich Village, West 10th Street. By the time Mr. B came panting up to where I stood on the postage landing of the footmost floor, I was too excited to care about what was later to become a tangled tapestry. What I was later to become entangled in a tape tangled in a tape become tangled entangled in tapestry. That general air of destitute and disquiet that hung somberly about the premises like a veil of Spanish moss in a grove of live oak. I waited impatiently while the agent rang the bell, and after a silent interval rang again. See, this is why when it comes to looking for apartments, especially in New York City, got to be more careful. Just got to be more careful. Pay attention to everything. Everything. If you can, take your small child, preferably under the age of 5, or 1, if you have any, or animal with you, because they know. They're going to tell you. They're going to tell you if the energy is off. They're going to let you know. My son, when moving here, when looking for an apartment in general, he slept throughout every viewing. I went to go see 4 apartments in one building, one day. Slept the entire duration. Then I went to go see 1 apartment in one day. Slept the entire duration. Had to climb stairs and everything. The 4 apartments was in a building that had an elevator, but the first 2 apartments, walk-ups. He slept. When I came to see this apartment, the boy woke up. He was up. Like, as soon as we walked in, he woke up. Like, where we at? What we doing? What's going on? Your children gonna let you know. Children and small animals is gonna let you know when the energy is not right. I knew myself as well. I listened to my intuition. But them babies and them animals, they're gonna tell you. That's what she fucked up. She didn't have a baby or animal with her. I would have got an animal real quick. At least a cat. Cats walk between worlds, and they also have a keen sense. I waited impatiently while the agent rang the bell, and after a silent interval rang again. I chafed at the slow response, at footsteps curiously hollow, as though coming down a long hall, coming reluctantly, grudgingly, in a tedious paso doble. And the door inched open, and the agent said, "I'd like to show the apartment." I was seized with the foolish fear that there was no apartment, no townhouse, that it was all a mirage, another of those futile fortes I had gone on so many times that even in sleep I saw doors, acres of them, trackless tundras of them, all blank-faced and unbiting, all opening upon nothing. But she was having a time. She was having a time, and she was getting desperate. That's what let her here. And that's why the house called on her. She was getting desperate. Number one law, one of the biggest overlooked laws of attraction is doing things out of desperation. You want something, you're trying to manifest it, you haven't stopped thinking about it. That's your first mistake. You ain't let it go. You thought about it, you build on it, and you ain't let it go. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was doing something out of desperation. Don't ever do anything out of desperation. Wait it out. Wait it out. Wait it out. I promise you. It's worth the wait. It's worth the wait. Wait it out. Like me. Not just with this apartment, but with my body. I'm taking my time. I'm getting the results gradually. I'm not going to lay on some table to get the fat sucked out or put things in place the way I want it. I'm doing everything the natural way, and I'm seeing the results the way I want to see them. I look damn good. The man who stood before us fanned at the fantasy himself. Thickest as a door, chilly of eye, he appeared to bar rather than invite our entry. As I slid past him, murmuring, "Sorry to trouble you," I could feel his hostility. Footsteps hollow in a long hall, this time mine, as I entered upon a passage, narrow like the stairwell, and even in broad daylight, filled with broadening shadows. Opening off it to the right was a small room flanked on opposite walls by old-fashioned clothes and cupboards. The quadrille of space that lay beyond was almost completely swallowed up by a huge tester bed from which frayed hanging drooped dispiritedly. In such a bed might one of England's Georges have gasped his last, for its bleak bulk seemed made for dying in than merely lying in. I turned away from an antique heap, my nostrils prickling with distaste, only to be affronted again by the dingy white walls surrounding it. Long ago they had burst their fragile cocoon of calcimine and erupted into evil-looking blisters which peeled and flaked a dun of dandruff onto the floor. But there was a wide window in the room which drew me to it, and though its uncurtained box panes, I caught a tantalizing glimpse of the uneven rooftops and jumbled chimney pots of brownstones backing up across the way from West 9th Street. Under the gaze of the occupant, I hurried back onto the hall. It was an even longer than I had guessed. In the demi-gloaming appeared to ramble on with unexpected, quirky little corners suddenly convulsing, snail-like, in upon themselves. Once again to the right, another small room here. Two, a single wide low with a great wooden armoire built into the wall beside it, an ark, wide flung like suddenly open arms. I walked through its generous embrace into the spacious room beyond. My eyes boggled. I could feel them sliding out of focus, away from the crazed jumble that plucked at them. Antiques everywhere, in every nook and inch and cranny, underfoot, overhead, of antiques. Not as I cherished them, redolent of beeswax, rubbed to a ruddy glow, blooming gently with time's precious Pontonia, but antiques cracked, crazed, chipped, charred, The rusted, rotted rubbish of ages, cross-laced with broken tips, shivered over my head. As I ducked to avoid them, I almost upset an old jar with faded empire swags that might have held the slops of Malmaison. A squat linen fold chest spoke uncomfortably close to me. It looked Flemish. It also looked as though it could have held a body. I wanted to run, but behind me lay the twisted maze, and in it somewhere, Suberus at the gates of hell. I had not the courage to pass him again, and so, in the confusion of the room and of my own bitter disappointment, Mr. B hastened to mitigate. Of course, we'll paint and do whatever repair work is necessary, he vouch-fed. And then, by way of explanation, actually, the place hasn't been lived in very much. Maybe 1 weekend a month. The man's a collector, has an old farmhouse out in Bucks County. Used this mostly for storage in the past 17 years. I was about to open my mouth to say politely but firmly thank you, but it won't do. Or was it to boil out my frustration? I hardly knew which. When I spied the fireplace more accurately, it was a coal grate of early Victorian vintage, and it was tucked into a far corner of the room, as primly as wallflower at the Coalition. It wore a facing pure white marble in surprisingly good condition. As I went over to it, I began, despite myself, to picture my own cherished curios, many of them antique, ranged along its length of pristine mantle. A shaft of sunlight shot across the room and into my eyes. I stared into it, sensing it was refaced in some strange way I had not seen before. When I crossed to one of the windows, I saw that the box pan glass was slightly convex and bubbly with an iridescent tinge not found in glass of modern manufacture. The agent said, "That's the original glass, since before the Civil War." It was then I became aware that the two windows in this room, though low and wide like the others, were not straight across, but gently curving, that the wall into which they were set curved with them. I ducked my head out of one and saw that we were in a half-round tower, reaching up to it like a great green net, where the leaf-laden branches of two old trees rooted in the garden below. Something stirred in me, an ancient instinct, a memory long buried, a yearning, half-formed but never present, for another time, another place. I don't know why my lifelong revulsion for dirt and disorder vanished, and everything seemed suddenly deuce, so oddly and yet so comfortingly familiar. As I drew my head back into the room, I fancied I could see candlelight leaping in those old panes, hear the rustle of full-skirted taffeta, smell not the dust and decay moldering about me, the faint yet lingering scent of lemon verbena and Florida water. A lazy, she ain't that off. Lemon verbena and Florida water? If she putting that in her home, she know what's up. A lazy glissando from some unseen instrument rippled against my senses. I know what it played. Home. You have come home. Quite without volition, almost as though I stood aside from myself watching a tableau. I heard my voice inquire, "How soon can I take occupancy here?" In 2 weeks. Startled by my sudden acceptance, the agent launched into a flurry of detail, leading me first to the kitchen, no more than a silver closet close by the coral the coal grate, then to the bathroom, an outmoded outside chamber with footed tub and a small skylight peeking directly overhead. I scarcely saw them. Like someone in a trance, I walked through yet another doorway, yet another passage connecting with the long hall. Subaru stood glowering at the front door, anxious to terminate our intrusion. In an attempt to placate him, I said, I have antiques too. It will be fun setting them up here. For a split second, something flickered in that chilly eye. You mean you're going to rent this place? Behind me, I felt the agent stiffen. All at once, the atmosphere was electric with animosity. My nerves began their familiar treadbare thrum. I had no desire to get caught up in a tenant management hassle and lose an apartment, but did I really want this apartment? Hard reality began to press in on me. This was no more than the renovated quarters of 19th century servants, makeshift, neglected, up 4 flights of stairs, the last vertigo steep. Most important of all, that would be my husband's reaction. Would he consider the evanescent quality of atmosphere worth the time, the money, and the labor we would have to put into it to make it a habitable home? In answer, the memory of all the L-shaped cubicles I had seen, laid one atop the other in monumental monotony, loomed up horridly. That did it. Oh, there's nothing so wrong here. A little spit and polish won't take care of, I declared with more conviction than I felt. Wish me luck. If only I had lingered. A fine spray had blown in upon me from an uncharted psychic sea, a spindrift warning from some far and frightening dimension I was as yet aware of but dimly. If only I had heeded it, asked questions, but having asked, would I have believed? Instead, I shot down the stairs miraculously, avoiding the pitfalls in the treacherous carpeting out into a bright September spangle of sunlight full upon 10th Street. I gazed at the townhouse, my townhouse. High on its stoop, it sat, the color of clotted cream. Across the way, the facades of its brick and brownstone contemporaries melted from berry red to the mallow rose, from parfait pink to a milky chocolate. Their black wrought iron railings had the glister of newly faceted jet, and in my mood of jubilation, it seemed even the brasses of coach lamps and door knockers glinted back at me with precious promise. As I passed the Church of the Ascension on the corner, it burst forth in a spat of silvery notes. It struck an hour in time that was to change me and my consciousness of the world around me forever. Chapter 2. A fortnight later, with my husband Fred and our frayed Irish wire hair terrier. You got a dog and you didn't bring him with you? Why you didn't bring the dog with you? She got a fucking dog and she didn't bring the dog with her. She felt something. She saw stuff. And still let the fucking house spin her. She still let the house spin her. I guess as an intuitive, a lot of times we know stuff and We just figure we're gonna let our intuition guide us, and our intuition isn't gonna lead us into danger. It's not gonna lead us into any danger that it can't get us out of. Yeah. Our intuition is not gonna lead us into any danger that it can't get us out of. It happened that night. I moved into what was to be my home for almost 7 troubled years. It happened that night. After a supper improvised out of tins, we stumbled wearily off to bed. Fred in his first little room off the long hall, I in the second, which contained the armoire, the arch, and the recliner bed, which I elected to use whenever overtired. I stretched out on it gratefully and lay listening to Penny's light breathing from a wicker basket at my side. But to sleep was elusive, and my thoughts began to nag, less dismay than I at its deplorable condition. Fred had seen the potential of the apartment instantly, yet I felt uneasy. You see? You see? The husband fell in love with her decision. The dog seems relaxed, somewhat. We don't know yet. He's protecting her. He's laying at her side. We don't know if he's relaxed for real. He might just be guard or on guard. He might just be on guard duty. He sleep, but he not sleep. Bet you if she got up or rustled a little bit, he'll follow her. The task of rehabilitation that Buckleward had now seemed as impossible as a Yugen labors, painting, sanding, scraping, scrubbing, and then there was the smell. Dot dot dot. Gradually, I had become aware of it. It seeped into my nostrils like miasma, stifling, suffocating. Stifling and suffocatingly, I sprang up, went through the arch into the tower room, and threw wide one of the curved windows. It was an October night filled with the blandishments of Indian summer. A ripe moon hovered over rooftop and chimney pot, where here and there a light sky glowing in the dusk. The nocturnal noise of 10th Street were muted here in the back gardens. I stood a long time at the window, filling my lungs with the scented air. Once again, old brick, old glass, old trees cast their spell over me. They were substance and 20th century that lay outside my door, no more than fitful shadow. The smell had gone. With sleep welling up in me, I threaded my way back among the cartons and packing cases to the daybed and curled up on my side. Moonlight meandered through the uncurtained windows, blanching the wall I faced. One moment it was a bright white blank. The next it was filled with a monstrous moving shadow that loomed up from behind me, smothering me in a sinister soundless void. Blacker than the night, it engulfed me. I could feel myself dissolving in it, slowly disappearing. Through a throat curled with terror, I screamed and went on screaming. By the time Fred rushed into the room, I was in the cold, clamoring gripping of hysteria. How to explain? Inexplainable. A shot of brandy, a cup of strong hot tea, a cigarette, and still I could not stop shaking. Could not make the words come out right, but I could tell you I wasn't asleep. I didn't dream it. I saw it. It was real. I cried over and over. Penny's offering herself as comfort jumped up and pressed close to my chill body, but in Fred's eyes I saw only cruelty and growing impatience. All right, so you weren't asleep. So it was branches of the trees reflected on the wall. Fred, listen, I tried to tell him about the trees, but his eyelids were weighted with exhaustion, and he cut me off with a yawn. Honey, I have to get up early. Go back to sleep. It's been a rough day. Moving really takes it out of you, you know? When you're this tired, it's easy to imagine things. Maybe already he was half out the room. It was a bird flying across the moon, tidally rooted, unflappable. Fred suddenly taking off in the night on the wings of posies, with the fine druidic touch yet. He who customarily met fancy with a flat matter of factness that made my more delicately attuned antennae quiver with indication. It was too much, especially since it hadn't been fancy. Still shaking, I got up and retraced my steps to the open window. It was just as I had tried to tell him. The tops of the trees reached only to the third floor. I could hear their breeze-born rustling, yet no branches showed upon the wall. As for the moon, it smirked back at me, relentlessly bright, as if any winged thing had flown across it. Then it had been a bat, a vampire bat. Shivering miserably, I crept back to the bed with my arms hugging Penny's woolly pelt. I waited tensely through the night, waiting for what? Toward dawn, I fell asleep, still waiting. A late morning sun lay aslant the reclaimer before I roused. It clung like a poultice to my eyelids. I rolled over and opened them attentively. The wall. I was facing the wall. The memory of the night before washed back over me with terrifying intensity. The shadow, a darkness primeval. A moving darkness. A darkness primeval. A moving darkness. I went into panic with Penny at my heels. I paced frantically among the curtains, with the exception of a few bed linens, cups and saucers. They were still packed. I could call the same moving company. We could get out of here quickly. 2 cups of coffee, too many cigarettes later, I faced the dismal truth. There was no place to go. This was the year of our landlord, 1957. New York City was locked into a housing shortage. The denizens of the zoos basketed in better accommodations than some of the natives, and for those who had not already found their niche, there was nothing but the dreary uniformity of a project, the dubious amenity of a cold water flat, or Xerox luxury of a high rise. The west side was decaying, the east side was flaying, and all around town rents were spiraling, and the myth of gracious living survived only in the glossy pages of House Beautiful here, at least amid the greening of Washington Square was a townhouse with fireplaces and bookcases beneath the windows and gardens below them, and hauntings. If I did not know precisely what I had seen, I knew with certainty that I had seen it. But in the light of day, I was only too willing to capulate it, to render unto reasoning the things that were reasons, that were the reasons for the Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes simply vanished like rabbits of a conjurer simply, or for an Easter island deserted by its unknown sculptors of the gargantuan, or an old serum left behind its earthworks to brood humanless over the Salisbury plain. Logic failing as it did hollowly, might not, whatever it was, have been a one-shot thing, a passing boogeyman who couldn't refrain from saying boo any more than I could resist peanut brittle. If I refuse to be stampede, if I just ignored it. The taglines of a verse I didn't even remember, I knew floated back surprisingly. For everything there is a reason, and I'll try to find it. But if I cannot find it, then I'll never mind it. Did she just say if I can't find it, I'll never mind it? If I can't find it, I'll never mind it. All writers are rappers, whether they know it or not. All writers are also rappers. I don't care if you just write your thoughts. You a rapper. You could be a rapper. It's not that hard. Logic failing, as it did Howley, might not, whatever it was, might have been a one-shot thing, a passing boogeyman. Okay, I read that part. Thus, in the time-honored tradition of evasion, of looking away before you saw something you were meant to see, I sugared my nerves and set about the business of unpacking. There was a large walk-in closet beside the bathroom. I tackled this first, filling it with the heavy garments we would be shortly needing, emptying a footlocker of the remainder of our linens. I shoved it as far back in the closet as it would go, but something stood in its way. I reached in and felt a large cardboard box. It was quite an ordinary box and very dusty, as though it had lain there a long time. I dragged it out and opened it. Totally unprepared for the priceless elegancies it harbored. Vibrant blue Bristol and fire-shot opaline, ruby red bohemian overlay, 18th century cannon ware. Silver resists on sapphire, gold and copper luster. Bow and Chelsea, and my favorite, the opulent dark blue and white of antique Edgewood. All very last bit of it smashed to smithereens. Tears of frustration stung hotly. For as many years as I could remember, in museums, in the windows of galleries and fine shops, I gaped at treasures like these, yearning to own them. Now here they were in profusion beyond my most Seabrick dreams, broken, useless. But why? How could such devastation have been brought about? It was as if malevolent fists had crashed mindlessly into every object within its reach. An assault of something evil against anything, everything of beauty. I don't know how long I squatted on my haunches, hunkering over them mutilated horde. Every antique she ever could have possibly have wanted. I guess stuff that she was looking at in shops or whatever, smashed to pieces. But not like gazing on it for so long that you like in a daze. With the coming of dusk, shadows had shifted into this small connecting passage and were thickly about me. Still, I made no move. Immobilized in a state of foreboding, I explored a new and certain knowledge. These things were broken because they had been thrown at something or someone. With the sound of Fred's footsteps coming up the last flight of stairs, I shoved the box as far back into the closet as I could get it and slammed the door on it as if it were a thing alive. Fred had stopped at a Chinese restaurant, and so we ate out of cartons again and went early to bed. I did not sleep this night either. I had long ago learned to live with pain. I had now to live with fear. During the daylight hours, with the sun streaming into the tower room, the aromatic scent of earth and browning leaves drifting from the garden, I was able to turn my thoughts from the dark corners gathering in them as I plunged into the task of making a home out of a shambles. I found that my decorating instinct had been right about the apartment. Day by day, I saw its character. A long buried charm emerged from the cocoon of neglect. The painters came, and I chose a vibrant American Beauty red for the tower room and for the smaller one beyond the arch as well. That long hall was so resistant to light, yielded to color, a rich, strong blue, almost royal, which smoldered effectively against the stark white ceiling and woodwork until we would curtain them. I put our old half shutters at the windows, and when we moved one of the closed cupboards in the bedroom to the opposite wall beside its fellow, we were enchanted to discover it hid still another white marble coral grate. My mini grand slid into place across from the armoire. Our books